Her true story, from California. My son texted, "You won't be joining us, my wife prefers to keep it only her family." After I paid for the whole vacation, so I froze the travel fund before takeoff. They boarded the plane, the card didn't. You should understand your place. My wife prefers to keep the vacation just for her family. You've already done your part by paying. That was the text my son sent me at exactly 11:02 p.m. 2 nights before the family trip I had been planning, funding, and dreaming about for 3 years. I sat at the kitchen table, my reading glasses perched on the tip of my nose, the soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the house. I had just finished placing the last set of travel-sized sunscreen bottles into the zippered bags I had labeled by hand, one for each grandchild. My hands were still sticky with tape from wrapping little souvenir bags with keychains that said "Aloha" and "Grandma loves you." The phone buzzed again. Another message. "Don't take it the wrong way, Mom, it's not personal. It's just simpler this way." I did not reply. I stared at the glowing screen until it went dark. Then I placed it face down on the table. He didn't call. He didn't say thank you. He didn't even bother to lie with kindness. Just a cold, quiet reshuffling of family, where the woman who raised him had become, in his words, not part of her family. I had known things were changing. It wasn't just the way Tanya, my daughter-in-law, corrected me in front of the kids, or the way she rolled her eyes when I told stories from when my husband and I first visited Hawaii on our honeymoon. It wasn't even how she started hosting holidays at her mother's house and forgot to mention it until the day before. No, what told me everything I needed to know was the way she had looked past me. Not through me, but past me, like a waitress at a restaurant that had already dropped off the check. Still, I never thought Nathan would go along with it. He had once written me Mother's Day cards that made me cry. He used to bring me pink tulips every March, even when he moved out of state. When he was a boy, he told his teachers I was his best friend. I kept the picture he drew in 2nd grade, the one where I had a cape and the caption said, "My mom saves the day." Apparently, I was no longer part of that story. I looked at the small duffel bag I had packed for myself. Inside were 2 sundresses I hadn't worn in years, a photo of my late husband I planned to place on the dinner table during our night at the beach, and a small box of matches for the candle I wanted us all to light in his memory. The candle was lavender, his favorite scent. I had imagined us standing on the sand, barefoot, as the sun dipped into the ocean. I imagined my grandson holding my hand, asking, "Did Grandpa love the beach too?" And I would say he loved it enough to bring me here before we could afford it. He loved it more because he shared it with me. But that wouldn't happen now, because I wasn't invited. I had paid for the beachfront villa. I had booked the flights. I had organized the airport transfers, the luau tickets, the snorkeling lessons, the breakfast baskets. I had spent hours on the phone with a travel agent, making sure the beds were soft enough for the kids, the walkways flat enough for Tanya's mother's bad knee. And now I was a line item that had been crossed off, the ATM that wired the funds and then quietly disappeared. I sat in the kitchen a long while. The clock ticked toward midnight. The house was dark around me, but I didn't turn on the light. I let the dim glow of the under-cabinet bulbs cast long shadows over the counters I had scrubbed earlier that evening. For a moment, I felt shame. Not anger, not even sadness, just shame. The quiet, aching kind that makes you feel like a fool for hoping. I thought about calling him. I even picked up the phone. But what would I say? "That hurts?" He knew that. "You've changed?" Of course he had. "Please let me come." I couldn't beg. Not after all I had given. I set the phone back down. Instead, I got up, walked slowly to my desk in the den, and turned on my old laptop. The screen blinked awake, sluggish but familiar. I clicked open the folder labeled Hawaii Travel Fund. There it was, the total I had been building toward since the day I retired, $21,763.84. It had started with $10 bills tucked away in envelopes. Then I began selling old furniture, then tutoring English online at night. Every dollar had gone into this trip. I had set up a travel fund account, linked the payments for the villa, the airline tickets, the services. I had also set up all the cards to pull from one primary source, mine, because I trusted them, because I thought trust was something I had earned. The cursor blinked. I hovered over the button that said, Freeze Account. A simple click would pause all payments. A phone call to the travel agency would halt everything. I didn't click, not yet. Instead, I opened a blank document and I started typing something else. Not a response to Nathan, not a plea. A list. A new list. Of names. Women from the church who hadn't left the state in 20 years. My friend Carol, whose son hadn't spoken to her since she got cancer. Louise, who buried her husband last fall and still brought his photo to Bible study. Frances, who helped raise her grandkids but wasn't invited to their graduations. Beverly, who told me last month that no one had ever taken a picture of her on the beach. I saved the file. Then I went back to the bank page. I clicked freeze. A small box popped up. Are you sure you want to pause all linked transactions? I clicked yes. Another message. All linked cards will be disabled immediately. Yes. Then I sat back, closed the laptop, and took a deep breath. I picked up the souvenir bag I had made for my youngest grandson. I took out the keychain and placed it on the table. Then I unwrapped the others, one by one. And for the first time in 3 years, I let myself imagine a different kind of trip. One where I was not unwanted, not a burden, not a footnote, but a host. And I smiled. Not out of revenge, but out of something stronger. Clarity. It started with a jar. An old mason jar I kept behind the flower in the kitchen cabinet. I called it the dream jar, though nobody knew that but me. Every time I skipped buying something small, a bottle of vitamins, a movie rental, a new pair of house shoes, I'd take that money, in cash, and slip it into the jar. It wasn't much at first. $5 here, the welk there, but over time it grew, quietly, like hope tends to do. 3 years I saved. I canceled my cable. I stopped buying my favorite tea. I tutored students online for extra income, even when my joints ached and my eyes burned. I turned the heat down at night and wore double socks. I declined invitations to lunch, telling friends I had a tight month. They didn't know I was putting every dime into that jar. For what? For a memory. For one last beautiful moment as a family. Hawaii wasn't just a destination, it was a symbol. James and I had gone there for our honeymoon. We were just 24, barely married, broke as could be. We shared a single suitcase and split sandwiches at lunchtime. He got sunburned so badly on the second day, he wore a bedsheet like a cape for the rest of the week. We laughed more than we ever would again. After he died, I made a quiet promise to myself. I'd take the family there. I'd let the grandkids see what he saw. Let Nathan feel the sand his father once walked. Maybe it would reconnect us. Maybe it would remind him of where he came from, of who loved him first. So I planned. I researched villas that could house all 9 of us. I called the travel agent a dozen times to ask about bed arrangements, dietary needs, and wheelchair access for Tanya's mother. I ordered custom t-shirts with everyone's name and the words, "Family is Forever, 2023, printed across the front. I chose a beachfront home with a fire pit. I imagined us sitting around it, lighting candles one by one, each of us saying a word to describe James. I would bring his photo, the one of him laughing with his head thrown back, sun in his hair, and I'd hold it while we all said something good. I imagined silence, then tears, then laughter, but mostly I imagined being seen, being thanked, being held. None of that happened. Because somewhere along the way, I stopped being part of the picture. I don't mean just the metaphorical one, I mean literally. I noticed it slowly. Fewer group photos. When they posed at Thanksgiving, Tanya would say, "Let's do one of just the kids." Then, "Let's do one with just our family unit." And by the time they were done, there wasn't time for one with me. At Christmas, they all wore matching sweaters, red with white trees. Mine was blue. I didn't even know there was a plan. Nathan would brush it off. "Oh, you're not into that stuff, Mom." But I was. I just wasn't asked. Tanya took over birthdays. She hosted everything at her mother's place. I was invited, but I felt like a guest. Once, she told someone, "Nathan's mom is here too," as if I'd wandered in uninvited. And always, she smiled like she didn't mean harm. But harm doesn't always come with raised voices. Sometimes it comes with exclusion, with omission, with being the one left out of every photo, every story, every seat at the table. But still, I planned. I held on, because this trip was going to bring us back together. Because once we were all under that Hawaiian sky, with waves whispering against the shore and children squealing in the sand. Maybe love would be enough to remind them. That was the story I told myself. That was the dream I built out of sacrifices, small and silent, until that text, that single text that turned a 3-year dream into a 3-second dismissal. You've already done your part by paying. Suddenly, every skipped tea, every cold night, every tutoring hour spent squinting at a screen felt foolish. I hadn't been building a bridge. I'd been building a pedestal, one they never planned to visit. I thought of the candles I'd packed, of the moment I imagined us holding hands by the fire. But the truth hit me like a wave breaking sharp against rock. They didn't want my stories. They didn't want my memories. They just wanted my money. And now that they had it, they wanted me to disappear. That night I went to the closet and unpacked my bag. I set the lavender candle on the table beside James's photo. Then I sat in the quiet and asked myself something no mother should ever have to ask. When did I become a burden in the family I'd built? The morning after the text, I woke up earlier than usual. Not because I had anywhere to be, but because I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing his words in my head. Not even his voice, just the words. Cold, typed, delivered through a screen. You've already done your part by paying. I moved through the house like a ghost, folding the same blanket twice, straightening picture frames that were already straight, wiping the kitchen counter though it was spotless. The silence clung to me. It hummed in the walls. Later that afternoon, I opened my email to check a grocery receipt, and that was when I saw it. Subject, Final Itinerary, Hawaii Family. Passage, sent from the travel agency. I clicked it without thinking. A full breakdown of flight schedules, villa check-in times, excursions, dinner reservations, rental car pickups, everything I had worked so hard to organize. I scrolled slowly, eyes scanning for confirmation of what I already suspected but hadn't wanted to face. There were 8 names. Nathan, Tanya, their 2 kids, Tanya's parents, Tanya's sister's boyfriend, not mine, not Mom, not Marilyn, not anywhere. 8 plane tickets, 8 lay greeting passes, 8 guests registered at the villa. I was not one of them. I stared at the screen, my hand hovering over the mouse. Then I zoomed in. Maybe there had been a mistake. Maybe I was under guest 9. Maybe they'd added me separately. Maybe, but there were no other attachments, no side bookings, no separate confirmation, just 8. I sat there for a long moment. Then I closed the laptop gently, like it might break if I moved too fast. That evening, Tanya called. Not Nathan, Tanya. Her voice was overly cheerful. We're just wrapping up packing, she chirped. I hope everything's set on your end money-wise. I think the final payment hits tomorrow, right? I didn't answer right away. Then I asked softly, Is there anything you need me to bring? A pause. A sharp, awkward silence. Bring, she echoed. Oh, no, you don't need to bring anything, I pushed gently. Just wondering if I should pack any games for the kids or snacks for the flight. I know sometimes they get motion sick. She cut me off, still smiling, but with steel in her voice now. Marilyn, we've got it all handled. You really don't need to worry. In fact, we were thinking it might be best if you took this trip to rest. Stay home. Focus on you. She didn't say it with malice, but the finality was there. They had planned the whole thing with me excluded, and were now pretending it was for my own good. After the call ended, I stood in my kitchen, staring out the window at the bird bath James had installed 20 years ago. The water was still, not a ripple, just like me. Not angry, not shocked, just still. I walked to the closet, pulled down the small fireproof lockbox, and opened it. Inside were the documents I'd kept since opening the travel fund, the account I created, the account I funded, the account linked to every single booking. I flipped through the forms. There it was in bold letters, account holder Marilyn Rose Monroe, authorized users none, no co-signers, no shared ownership, no alternate access. I sat down and opened my banking app. There it was. Travel fund, $21,763.84. Status, active, linked cards. 6 primary billing owner, me. That's when I started thinking about how easily they had erased me, how confidently, how they had spent my generosity like it was their right, and discarded my presence like it was a burden. I was never meant to go. They just needed the money. It had never been our vacation. It was a transaction. and I had been the bank. But the thing about banks is, they can close. I did not make any decisions that night. Instead, I turned off the phone, made myself a cup of peppermint tea, and sat with it. I let myself feel it fully, not just the insult, but the clarity. They did not forget me, they omitted me. And worse, they assumed I would be too passive, too old, too grateful for crumbs to notice. They thought I'd stay in the shadows and smile anyway. They forgot who raised them. I closed the app, and for the first time in months I slept through the night. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone to announce what I'd discovered. No dramatic phone calls, no explosive accusations. I simply made tea, sat in the chair James used to call the lookout, and stared out the window while my laptop blinked awake beside me. The house was still. No TV, no radio, just the wind tapping against the pane, and the occasional hum of the fridge. And in that silence, something inside me settled, not like calm, but like stone. I was no longer confused. I was no longer waiting for an apology. I was planning. I opened the banking application and scrolled to the travel fund section. My name was still at the top, account owner. I checked the linked cards, 6 in total. 1 for the resort, 1 for the car rental company, 1 for the airline, 3 for incidentals, food, excursions, entertainment, all set to auto-draw from the same source, my fund. I clicked the Settings tab. There it was, Transaction Lock Freeze Mode. I hovered over the toggle. A small note beneath it read, "Activate this setting to pause all outgoing charges from this account. Linked cards will be disabled. No new charges can be authorized without account owner verification." 1 click. That was all it would take. But I didn't click it yet. Instead, I opened another tab, the one for my calendar. I marked the departure day with a red circle. They were scheduled to leave LAX at 10:45 IEM, local time. If they arrived 2 hours early for check-in, that meant I'd want the freeze to begin at around 8:15 IEM, just as they queued up at the gate, confident everything had been paid for. That would be the moment the cards stopped working. But only if I told them not to. Only if I held the silence long enough. Still, I didn't press the button, not yet, because once you decide to stop playing the role people assign you, the good mother, the generous grandmother, the smiling supporter who never asks for anything back, there's no returning to that mask, and I wanted to be sure. So I gave them one last chance. Just one. I sent a message to Nathan, simple, soft. Me. Let me know if you'd like any help with the kids' bags or snacks before the trip. I can bring some extra motion sickness bands for Olivia. No reply. An hour passed. 2. I could see that the message had been read. Still nothing. No thank you. No acknowledgement. No we appreciate you. Just nothing. That's when I knew. There was no misunderstanding. This wasn't about miscommunication or forgetfulness or Tanya's preferences. This was about entitlement. About the quiet cruelty of people who think love is a one-way transaction. I was the vault, and they were cashing out. But not anymore. I returned to the banking app. My finger hovered again. Then, without hesitation, I clicked. The icon turned blue. The message updated. Freeze mode activated. All transactions are now paused. Manual authorization required to resume. Done. I stared at the screen for a moment, letting it sink in. There would be no confirmation email sent to them, no alert, no warning. They would find out the way I found out I wasn't invited, in the most silent, undeniable way possible. I leaned back in my chair, took a sip of tea and exhaled. It was not revenge. It was reality. A reality they chose. But that did not mean I had to fund it. Over the next 48 hours, I said nothing. When Tanya posted a photo of matching beach hats on social media, I didn't comment. When Nathan texted the family group chat a final, ready for takeoff message, I didn't respond. And when my youngest granddaughter sent me a voice note saying, "Grandma, we're going to see sea turtles," I saved it, pressed it to my heart, and said aloud, "I'm sorry, baby, but someone had to teach your parents the value of presents." Then I returned to my laptop and opened a new spreadsheet. This time, it wasn't for them. It was for me. I made a list titled, "Those Who Deserve to Be Seen." At the top, I wrote, Carol, Beverly, Louise, Frances, Nora, Denise, each one a woman like me, overlooked, underestimated, overused. and beneath each name I began mapping what a vacation could look like, not for reward, but for restoration, not out of pity, but out of power, because if I was going to be the one holding the checkbook, I would decide who was worth the trip. That night I slept with the window open. The wind whispered, like a secret finally spoken. They had their bags packed. They had their boarding passes printed. They thought the only thing left was the flight. But the flight runs on more than fuel. It runs on trust. And they had none left with me. They left for the airport with matching luggage, straw hats, and that soft, smug air people wear when they think everything has gone exactly according to their plan. Tanya posted a photo on Instagram from the backseat of the Uber, the kids grinning, Nathan making a peace sign, her own caption reading, "Off to paradise, family only," the last part cut like glass. I saw it while sitting at my kitchen table, sipping coffee from a chipped mug I had owned since before Nathan was born. The same mug he once made me breakfast in bed with when he was 9 years old. I did not like what I felt, but I did not look away. I watched their story unfold, frame by frame. At the airport, at check-in, at the gate, luggage stacked, kids jumping. Tanya's mother posed beside the airline sign like it was a red carpet. 8 smiles, no seat for me. Then the message came in. "Nathan, hey, getting weird error at check-in. Can you check the travel account real quick?" I didn't reply. 5 minutes passed, then another. "Nathan, they're saying the card was declined multiple times. You see anything on your end?" Still, I said nothing. Then the calls started. At first, 1 every 10 minutes, then every 5, then back-to-back. Voicemails followed. "Mom, it's me. Just give me a quick call, please." "Okay, I'm not sure what's going on, but we can't get the rental confirmed. It's saying funds unavailable. Can you look? Mom, please, the kids are freaking out. Just tell me if something happened to the account." I kept the phone face down. The clock read 8:27 a.m. The flight was scheduled to depart at 10:45 p.m. I pictured them standing at the counter, scanning and re-scanning those plastic cards, Tanya growing more frantic with each beep of denial, her parents asking questions in low, sharp tones, Nathan sweating, trying to pretend he was still in control. Then came a voicemail with a different tone, a low, urgent whisper. "Mom, I don't know what you did, but if this is because of the text, can we please talk?" No apology, no admission, just an offer to talk, now that their plans had fallen apart, and still I said nothing. The resort called next, not to my phone, but via email. Subject: Booking cancellation request confirmed. Dear Miss Monroe, we have processed the requested cancellation of your villa booking. Due to the account freeze, associated charges have been reversed. As per your authority as the sole account holder, no further action is required. We hope to welcome you in the future. I read it once, then twice, and finally I allowed myself a small, bitter breath of release. They would not be welcomed. Not there. Not now. Maybe not ever. At 10:40 a.m. Nathan texted again. "We're boarding. Call me, please." But I didn't. They took off without a place to land, because money is only a guarantee when backed by trust, and they had broken theirs. By noon I had over 50 missed calls. From Nathan, from Tanya, even from her mother. I didn't listen to any more voicemails. I went for a walk instead. The air was warm, birds chirped. A neighbor waved and asked if I was heading anywhere for spring break. I smiled and said, "Not yet, but soon." When I returned, the phone had finally stopped ringing. Instead, there was one new message. "Nathan, look, if this was about what we said, maybe we messed up, okay? I don't know, things got twisted. But the kids are here, they're excited. We can still fix this. Please, just unlock the account. I promise we'll talk everything through when we get back." I stared at the screen. They wanted the vacation and postponed the apology. They wanted forgiveness without confession. They wanted me to fund their joy while they exiled mine. So no, I did not unlock the account. I did not answer the message, and I did not explain myself. Because I owed them nothing. Because sometimes silence is the only reply strong enough to be heard. The refund arrived 2 days after their flight. It came in small notifications, one by one. First the resort. Then the rental car company, the airline taxes and fees, the tour packages, the private chef deposit, the lays, the luau, the snorkeling excursion, all returned, all reversed, all mine again. My travel fund account, once drained by love, was full again. But this time, love would not be blind. This time, I would spend it differently. Not for appearances, not for people who viewed me as a wallet with wrinkles. This time, I would spend it on those who knew what memory was worth, because they too had lived lives of giving without being seen. I opened my notebook, the same one I had used to write down James's favorite songs, his old fishing recipes, and the names of every grandchild. I flipped to a clean page and wrote 3 words at the top: The Forgotten Women. Underneath, I began listing names. Carol from church, a widow whose children hadn't visited in 5 Christmases. Frances, who still wore her wedding ring, even though her husband had left her 30 years ago. Beverly, who cared for a brother with dementia and slept on a cot beside his hospital bed. Nora, who once told me, the worst part of old age isn't the pain, it's the invisibility. Lucille, my old neighbor, a retired librarian who'd never seen the ocean. And Dottie, who had once given me a ride to the clinic when I twisted my ankle and never let me repay her. I made 6 phone calls. Each conversation was the same, hesitant hellos, followed by stunned silence, then disbelief. You want to take me where? Hawaii, dear, for 1 week. No catch. But why me? Because someone should. Because you matter. I made the bookings under my own name this time. 1 villa, 6 women, 7 days. No tags, no hashtags, no family-only captions. I called the travel agent and gave her different names. I asked for separate beds and 1 large table with enough space for all of us to sit together every night. Then I went to the box beneath my bed. Inside was the photo of James I had planned to place at the head of our family table. His smile still strong, still mischievous, still mine. I had the photo enlarged and framed. Not in gold, but in soft walnut, the kind of wood that grows darker and more beautiful with time. I packed it in bubble wrap and placed it carefully in my suitcase. When we arrived at the villa, a place perched above the ocean, where palm trees swayed like slow dancers and the salt air kissed your skin before you knew it, I walked through the front door and set that photo on the dining table. No one questioned it. No one asked me to move it aside. That night, we sat together under hanging lights, the sound of waves whispering through the open doors. Carol wore a bright scarf and kept refilling everyone's wine. Beverly toasted to finally being somewhere I didn't have to clean after. Frances cried when she saw the view from her window. We didn't talk about who forgot us. We talked about who we remembered. We didn't compare scars. We showed each other the strength beneath them. And James, my James, watched it all from the center of the table, his smile never fading. Each night, we lit 1 candle beside his photo. Each woman said 1 thing they wished someone had told them when they were 30. I see you. You're allowed to rest. You don't have to earn love. Your story matters. You are not a burden. You are never invisible. On the last night, we walked the shore in silence. The stars were so close, it felt like you could reach up and tuck one into your pocket. The water curled around our ankles. The moon made silver of every wrinkle and curve and scar. I looked around at the women beside me, women who had given without asking, loved without limit, endured without applause. And I realized something. I hadn't just taken them on vacation. I had brought them home. To each other, to themselves, to the reminder that memory, when shared with the right people, becomes more than a flash in time. It becomes legacy. The email arrived 3 days after they returned. I had just come back from a morning walk, the ocean still whispering in my ears. My suitcase was halfway unpacked, with a half-eaten pineapple wrapped in the fridge, and the scent of plumeria still clinging to my clothes. I sat down at my desk, opened my inbox, and there it was. Subject: Just want to clear the air, from Nathan. I stared at it for a long moment before clicking. Hi, Mom, we're back now. It was, well, not quite what we imagined. A lot went wrong, obviously, and I guess some of that was our fault. I'm not saying everything was handled perfectly. Maybe things could have been communicated better. Tanya says hi, by the way. She was really stressed and didn't mean to exclude you like that. I think maybe she just wanted the trip to feel a certain way. You know how she gets about structure. Anyway, I've been thinking, maybe we weren't fair. Maybe we messed up. But we're home now and trying to sort through a lot. Honestly, the kids are confused, and we're trying to shield them from too much drama. That said, we're in a bit of a bind financially. We had to rebook a bunch of stuff on credit, and it's kind of snowballing now. So I just wanted to ask, if you're able, could you maybe consider returning the original deposit we gave for the trip? Or even part of it? I know you probably feel hurt, but we're still family. Just let me know. Nathan, I read it once, then again, then a third time. Each time, my eyes found their way back to one sentence. If you're able, could you maybe consider returning the original deposit? I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence sit thick in the room. They wanted the money back. Not just an apology, not healing, not reconciliation. They wanted a refund. I thought about the word deposit, as if they had invested something, as if they had contributed to a collective vision. But they hadn't deposited anything but assumption. Assumption that I would pay, that I would remain silent, that I would feel grateful to be included, even on the outskirts. I clicked the Sent Items folder and found the original transaction. Every payment had come from my name, my account, my sacrifice. There had been no shared fund, no co-signed contribution, just me. They were asking me to give them my money to cover the cost of their choices. It would have almost been funny if it weren't so familiar. Because that's what mothers do, right? Pay the bill and swallow the insult. Hold the pain and hand over the blessing. Get erased from the photo but still by the frame. I closed my eyes and pictured the dining table in Hawaii. 6 women laughing, clinking glasses, passing bread. James smiling from the center, in his walnut frame. No demands, no expectations. Just presence. Just peace. Then I thought of Nathan's email. The absence of any real apology, the presence of excuses, the convenient inclusion of Tanya's stress, and the vague suggestion that I should just understand. But understanding doesn't mean surrender, and love without respect is not love at all. I reopened the email, hovered over the reply button, then closed it again. There was nothing I needed to say. Because if you need to explain why you won't refund betrayal, the person asking never deserved an explanation in the first place. I folded the laptop shut and went to the kitchen. I poured a glass of iced tea and looked out the window. A bird dipped low across the yard, brushing past the wind chime James had bought on our 35th anniversary. It sang a note as light as memory, and I smiled. I may not have received a true apology, but I no longer needed one, because I had something better. I had clarity, and I had kept what was mine. I sat on the beach, toes buried in the warm, forgiving sand, watching the tide roll in like breath itself. The sky was the kind of pink that only appears in postcards or memories you swore you'd forgotten. Behind me, the villa glowed with the sounds of women laughing, not loudly, not for show, but in that low, full way that comes from somewhere deep, from someplace healing. Frances was telling a story about the time she took the wrong bus and ended up 3 towns away from her wedding rehearsal. Carol was trying to teach Beverly how to hula, with a flower tucked behind one ear. Dottie was singing an old lullaby under her breath. And Nora, sweet Nora, was writing a postcard to herself, addressed to the home she said no one had written to in over a decade. I watched them and thought, this is what family looks like when no one's trying to impress each other. Just presence, just joy, just permission to be. It had taken me a long time to understand that love doesn't come with volume, it comes with consistency, with showing up, with listening, with choosing someone even when they're no longer convenient. That night, after dinner, we gathered outside on the patio. I pulled out the candle. Lavender, the last one. I had brought 7. 6 were already lit, each one by a different woman, each one carrying a memory, a name, a goodbye they'd never been allowed to say aloud. Now it was my turn. I set James's photo at the center of the table. The women fell quiet. I held the matchstick in my hand. This, I said softly, was supposed to be for all of them, for my family. But I think maybe it was always meant for this. I struck the match. The flame flared, then steadied. I lit the candle and watched the wax begin to melt, slow and certain, like time itself. One of the women, Beverly, reached over and touched my hand. I didn't think I'd feel this again, she whispered. Peace, gratitude, like I mattered. She looked at me, tears welling in her eyes, and I didn't think it would come from someone like you. Someone like me? I asked, smiling. Someone who knows, she said, what it's like to give everything and still be left outside the door. I didn't respond. I just held her hand a little tighter. After the candle burned for a while, I stood up and walked down to the edge of the beach. The women followed behind me, slowly, barefoot, each carrying a seashell or a ribbon or a single written name tucked in their pocket. We formed a circle in the sand. No ceremony, no script, just silence. And then I said it, not to them, not even to James, but to the part of me that had needed to hear it most. I'm not sad anymore. Because I wasn't. I wasn't angry either. I wasn't waiting for Nathan to call. I wasn't hoping Tanya would realize what she'd done. I wasn't holding out for some teary reunion where everyone finally understood how much I had carried. I had stopped carrying it. And for the first time in decades, I felt light. I thought about that email, that pathetic, calculated attempt to turn apology into negotiation. I thought about the years I spent trying to be enough for people who only saw me when they needed something. And I smiled. Not the kind of smile you wear at family gatherings where you're handed a paper plate and told to sit at the kids' table because there's no more room. No, this was the kind of smile that comes when you realize you were never the problem. You were just giving your best to people who'd already decided it wasn't enough. That's when the words came. Quiet as the wind. Kindness breeds entitlement. So I erased that kindness. And now I owe nothing to anyone. Not because I was bitter, because I was finally free from expectations that had only ever drained me. Free from the weight of false belonging. Free from the performance of motherhood that required constant sacrifice without ever being asked, "And what about you?" I stood at the shoreline and let the waves come to me. They wrapped around my ankles and pulled at the sand like they were saying, "Let it go." So I did. I let go of the dream of a family that would hold space for me. I let go of the house I helped build, but was never welcomed in. I let go of the quiet, endless reaching for approval I'd already earned 1,000 times over. And what remained was this: a handful of women, a villa glowing behind us, a husband's smile frozen in a photo, and a heart no longer begging to be seen. I turned back and looked at them, my chosen family, and thought, I was never left behind. I simply found the ones who were walking my way. If this story touched something deep in you, if you've ever poured your heart into a family that forgot you, if you've ever been erased and had to write yourself back in, then you belong here. This is Grandma True Stories, where silence becomes strength and memory becomes power. We tell the stories no one else dares to, of mothers discarded, of women who endured, of legacies rebuilt, not with noise, but with truth. So if you believe kindness isn't weakness, but wisdom that waits, if you believe that being forgotten isn't the end of your story, but the start of a better one, subscribe to Grandma True Stories today. Because when a grandma speaks, the world finally listens.